Welcome to Exploring the Metaverse, where we explore the depths of virtual and augmented reality and the ever-expanding metaverse and how it applies to regular people. Today's show featuring an incredible guest, Mr. QuHarrison Terry. He's a growth marketer at Mark Cuban Companies, a Dallas, Texas venture capital firm where he advises and assists portfolio companies with their marketing strategies and objectives. He's been featured on CNN, Harvard Business Review, Wired, Forbes, and is the co-host of CNBC's Primetime series No Retreat Business Bootcamp. As a speaker and moderator, QuHarrison has presented at CES, TEDx, Techsylvania in Romania, Persol Holdings in Tokyo, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and more. And don't forget, QuHarrison is also a 4-time recipient of LinkedIn's Top Voices in Technology Award. Hey!
Yo, what's up? What's up? How you been?
I'm awesome, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, man. Of course. It's been a pleasure. I know we've been trying to get this to go or happen for some time now.
Yeah, it's no worries, man. I really love your hairstyle, though. I have to say, it's absolutely right on point with the vibe I'm feeling.
Hey, it's easy to maintain that way. That's what I always say.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, it is absolutely, man, my honor to speak to someone such as yourself. I've taken some time and read through some of the things I could find online about you. Your amazing webpage, QuHarrison.com, which is fantastic. It has so much information, and you seem like such a diverse individual. You've got an incredibly well-rounded resume. But here on this show, I've been really trying to get into the virtual reality world and the augmented reality world. And just before we touch on any of these points, I really wanted to just mention that word metaverse. It's a bit of a buzzword, and some people take to it maybe in different ways, understandably, right? Given the media and the press that it receives. And I just want to really impress upon the point that for me, it really is a general, broad, and diverse word that does not just refer to any one specific social media company who might be trying to capitalize, on that word's use. So, how are you, sir? Welcome to the show, Mr. QuHarrison Terry. Tell us about yourself, sir. Let my viewers know just about yourself, man.
Yo, what's up? It's QuHarrison Terry, also known as the author of the Metaverse Handbook. We've had a lot of fun exploring the metaverse, and I'm looking forward to doing that here on the show with Matthew. What's good?
Oh, man, I really appreciate it. And that's the first real big question that I put is about that book. I really would love for you to kind of just dig in a little bit, let the viewers know, let the listeners know mainly about this book. I'm really on point with a lot of your points, and I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, so it started off a few years ago, and I originally published the NFT Handbook back in 2021. And this was a good book. And for those that read it, in chapter 9, I talk a bit about, the future of NFTs and what utility is there for digital scarcity amongst digital items and digital collectibles. And quite frankly, in chapter 9, I touch on this whole concept of the metaverse because we start to think about the next version of the internet and the spatial web that would exist. But one chapter didn't do it justice. So I came back around and wrote the Metaverse Handbook. And I see this more as the technical guide. If you want to know, what's out there, what are smart contracts, how to buy and sell NFTs, this is the book for you. If you want to learn more about the metaverse and get the TED Talk version on it with well-researched facts and company names and the people and the creators that are building it, this is the best book I could put out at the time that gives you just that. And so that's how the Metaverse Handbook came to life. As far as my fascination with the metaverse and just in general, it's one of those things where I'm always captivated by emerging technologies. And the VR was something that, I have way too many VR headsets to account for. Within reach right now, if we did a game, I could probably grab 3 to 4 VR headsets just within my arms. You could watch me on camera. I could be like, bang, bang, bang. And the reason for that is, one, the batteries don't last that long. And, you have different headsets for different purposes. Some people use headsets for work. Others use it for development. Others use them for communication and all these different utilities and use cases. And for me, it was just a world that I've always just been captivated by. And so when I saw the metaverse, I was like, this is going to go beyond the headset, but very few people know what that actually means and what that is going to actually entail. And so that was what led me to just going down the whole path of like, breaking down the metaverse and non-technical terms and creating something where you could ideally inspire the next generation of creators that aren't the company you aforementioned earlier, to go and feel empowered and have an understanding that would allow them to take this places that we just can't even imagine yet.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree more. I'm 41 years old, and I was there in high school right when the internet was being born. And I remember looking at this technology at the time and thinking, like, this is it. Like, this is the thing that's going to change my whole life as a student at the time. And little did I understand the broad implications that this would truly bring, to our society, to every kind of person in all reaches of the world. And I look at this technology now with these virtual headsets being really in their infancy, at the very beginning. How do you look at the time frame of this kind of tech, and where do you think we are in terms of mass adoption versus it still being what might be considered a bit of a niche at this point?
Man, that's a great question. I would say on the adoption timeline, I think for Web3 in general, we probably have about 30 years before we see all the visions that have been prophesized. Sorry, it's still early in the morning, so my words, they're not as buttery smooth. I know it's the podcast, so my apologies to the listeners. I can speak. It's just it's early for me. This is the first show that I'm doing today.
Oh, so, wow, okay.
Yeah. But what's been prophesized and what will actually happen, I think we've got at least 30 years. If you don't believe me on that, that's fine. But I'll just point to cloud computing and how long that took for organizations to actually go from this idea of a cloud to we actually living in a world where most of that data exists on some server and not necessarily on a hard drive or some files in the basement of some organization. And quite frankly, even in 2022, we live more in a hybrid cloud society than we do an actual cloud society. And it's funny because there's a lot of cloud providers. I remember, we talk about 15 years ago, using Dropbox, you would have literally felt like you were a figure from the future. Because
I remember when it launched.
yeah. Like you would have felt like you would have felt even more empowered than Marty McFly, because you would just show up and it'd say, all right, give me the flash drive, give me the hard drive. And you were like, there's a link. Yeah. It was mind-blowing. And so now we're at this point where we talk about metaverses or the metaverse, whichever. I mean, I think that there's one metaverse, it's not plural, but there's a lot of corporations that have done press releases that say they have their own metaverse. Yeah. So for the sake of marketing speak, we'll talk about the metaverses. And what's out there is a lot of different silos. There's a lot of different people that are in these spaces that are really talking to no one because there's no true community. There's no real way to be authentic in those endeavors. And that's going to come. It's going to come when the technology and the hardware gets a bit better. Just today, Niantic announced that they're working with Qualcomm and they are working on a variation of an outdoor AR headset. This is coming from Niantic, the same company that changed our lives 6 years ago when they unveiled Pokemon Go.
It gives me goosebumps.
That's my point, right? They're now getting into the hardware. Or about 6 or 7 months ago, we saw them get into VPS, which is their version of GPS, but more so specified for augmented reality creatures and developments. And so it's kind of cool to see where all this stuff is coming, but it takes time. And what we have to just get behind as technologists, as people that want to see the innovation come to life tomorrow, we have to realize that education is the first step, right? People have to know that these new interfaces will exist. You need to get developers on board with it today, which is why I love Niantic as an example. Is they started out with their SDK 6-7 months ago. And you can get access to that API now. They then came out and said, hey, manufacturers, we already have an SDK, integrate that. And there's going to be so many headsets. Here's some standards at which you can kind of benchmark against. And I'm sure Niantic will be able to create some pretty compelling deals and offers with all of the headset manufacturers, regardless of which corporation it comes from, because they've already been a leader in the space. They pioneered what AR and augmented reality could be. They're showing us some capabilities of XR. And now what we're looking at is a future where there are some small innovators that most people have never heard of that are doing these breakthrough things that in the next 10 years will make the metaverse much more of a reality for us all. And that was a long way of getting there, but it's one of those things where, like, look, Web3, probably 30 years away. Metaverse, we're probably about 10 years away from seeing some really cool stuff manifest.
I think it's incredible how things have been manifesting. And you look at these small companies doing big things, and then a massive corporation like Niantic coming forth with this kind of investment. And to me, it's just a matter of time before these massive corporations, they bring in the different tech from different companies, and they start to make a more broad and diverse set of hardware that people can use. And as that tech gets better and it gets smaller and more accessible and easier to wear, I think that the popularity of the quote unquote regular people, the average end user, might really start to grow and to be embraced, because it seems a bit, it's sort of dividing folks at this point. There seems to be folks that are sort of on the all inside, like me, like, you don't have to tell me twice, I'm right there with you. But then it's a bit of a tough sell. Do you think it's getting more popular? I've actually been feeling my recently that there's like a little bit of a dip, but to me, that's just time to buy, right?
No, I think on the metaverse side, I actually don't think that there's a dip coming. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have these pockets of people that just get the technology way faster than the rest of the, like, it's kind of like Clayton Christensen and his Innovator's Dilemma. Have you read that book?
No, sir.
Okay, so there's a book by Clayton Christensen. It's called The Innovator's Dilemma. And what he has in the book are, I'm just trying to, I want to make sure I get I want to get the graph right.
Yeah, I don't want to misquote, but I think the sentiment is completely there.
Yeah. So what is interesting is he talks about like this graph, and in that graph, it's like an adoption curve where he's like, I'm trying to find, I'm trying to find it. I can't, I don't have my notes. Hold on.
Well, at least we didn't just sit here and make this all up ahead of time. I haven't even shared any of these questions with you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I found the graph, right? And I'll share this graph with you too, so you can include it in the show or whatever.
Certainly.
But he talks about the chasm, and most companies, especially technology companies, they have to cross the chasm. The early market of the chasm consists of two parts. You have the innovators and the early adopters, right? And those are largely tech enthusiasts and visionaries. And then in the mainstream market, there's this gap. There's the chasm, is what he calls. Go read the book, and I'm not going to elaborate on the chasm. But your goal as a technology company is to cross that chasm. And then on the other side of that chasm is the mainstream market. In that mainstream market, he talks about the pragmatists, the conservatives, and the skeptics, right? And so you have, like, he breaks it down into three parts: the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. Where we're at right now with the metaverse, and more specifically VR, because I think that VR is going to come to life a little bit faster than even XR, really, because even though the Meta Quest Pro was unveiled and released, it still has a long way to go, in my opinion, before we start to see the true realities of XR come to life. Like, I think we're probably 5 years away. I haven't seen what Apple's working on, but even still, the first version of any Apple product is not the one that blows your mind. It's usually 2 or 3 that they start to really catch their bearings and showcase why they're
iPhone
Apple.
3GS. I mean, that thing just took off and it went everywhere.
Yep. The same thing is true for the MacBook Air. Same thing is true for even the iPod. Like, so when you look at the Apple Watch, like when you look at Apple, their first product is usually for their core consumers, the Apple diehards, the Apple fanboys, the developers. And then they really go for that mainstream market, which is a great compare and contrast to what I was explaining. I think with the use cases that we've nailed for the metaverse as it stands today, is gaming. No one's questioning that.
No.
So everybody is pointing to all these various games, and the gaming engines are getting much better because there's new money coming in from all the fascination in metaverse technologies. So you see the Unreal Engine 5 and some of the developments that have been pushed there. You see what's happening in Unity. I'm sure there's going to be some new engines unveiled here soon, but like game engines are powering some crazy, crazy graphics in games. On the flip side, we're seeing like the meditation industry and the workout in the fitness industry, like really do damage. Some of the most popular experiences on the Quest platform are workout and meditation apps. And to like, to me, that's like, it's insane. But then when you think about what you like, when you think about it, it's like, hey, you can buy one of these, or you can buy one of these, right? And when you get one of these, it costs less than a Peloton, and you've got more workouts than a Peloton.
And infinitely editable, updatable. You can have all sorts of different trainers and inspirational individuals there with you. It makes perfect sense. Like I've never been in that space, and you talking about it, it's like, wow, what a way more accessible way for somebody such as myself who isn't necessarily as invested in that area to think I can do that in the privacy of my home. And that's just one little use case.
That's what I'm saying. So like, fitness and VR, like that's a big, 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 big industry, especially when you start to look at where we are and where we could go. And the interchangeable facial interfaces, even in the Quest 2, dude, we are at not even the innovator phase of that. We are still probably at the precipice of what's about to happen in VR and fitness. And some of the best games too, like I really enjoy Experience the Thrill of the Fight. It's the boxing simulator, really, really, really solid virtual reality application. But there's others. I mean, people play Beat Saber, which is fitness and gaming. Yeah,
Linus Tech Tips, he talks about that all the time. Yeah, it makes you wonder if that guy does any work. He's always I find it so exciting that there's so many use cases, and you dial in on this one very specific exercise fitness specific component. And I look at the like corporations, and I look at the business use cases, and how this particular technology could actually trickle kind of from the top down, and big money being the ones to really start getting it into the hands of people who might not be inclined to buy it at home. But if you use this kind of tech at work and use this kind of tech at school,
right?
I just think once the kids especially start kind of demanding this type of thing for Christmas, it's like a snowball rolling down the hill.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you say corporations, right? Because when I think about corporations, I mean, like laptops existed for years, right? IBM ThinkPads, Dell, HPs, and those were what you got if you had a corporate job. They'd give you a corporate laptop. However, people still prefer desktops for several years, more than half a decade, right? When you look at the early 2000s, when all the corporations got on board with the laptop movement, and then you look at the shift, I think we all can agree that by 2012, 2013, we did start to see a massive shift in the consumer index towards more demand for laptops, for their portability, for their sleekness. And quite frankly, people got sick of the desktop. And so like the workstation as we knew it as power users, it still exists. And people like Linus Tech Tips and probably yourself and myself, we all have, gaming workstations. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But like the average person, they migrated to the laptop. And it's gotten so crazy that what once used to be a standard issue item is now you can bring your own device to many corporations, right? Because they've got new technology policies. And so I think that I don't know if I'm on the train of saying, hey, let's let the corporations dish out and distribute all the headsets, because if we do that, I think we're actually going to put ourselves back a few years, because I mean, how often there's some people that mix their work laptop and use it for everything, but the majority of people, they're like, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to do my thing. Yeah. I'm going to leave this open.
Draw that line.
Yeah. And they throw it in the corner and it collects dust. And I don't think we need that right now for the headsets. Like if cell phones were like that in the early days, I think we would have.
Super good point.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we saw that. The BlackBerry was literally that. When we look at the BlackBerry, it was a great communications device. Created probably the digital addiction that we all know and love today. But it wasn't until we had a device that could challenge the BlackBerry,
Right.
which
It
was the
didn't
antique.
evolve. It was so stuck in its way. And as the people's tastes and desires shifted, it stayed stagnant. And that
Yeah,
company has demonstrated what happens when you don't evolve with the times.
and that's my point as to why I don't think corporate VR or corporate communications is what we need, because they're going to just lean into this stuff for training, right? Like one of the greatest utilities for them is like you can literally build the exact process of how you want to teach someone something and have 5 different ways, but they can all be exact. And then you can get away from this whole segment of having middle managers train, you know, the next the next new hire, or instead of having, you know, someone like, if you lose like the best HR professional that knew how
Maybe
to
at Twitter.
onboard. They're great example,
I
right?
couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
You know, it's all good. I mean, I love it, right? It's like one of those things where that's a great example. So long story short, I think we are at this point where the corporate metaverse complex and the consumer metaverse complex are entirely different industries and entities. And, you know, what the corporations do versus what the consumers do, I don't really think that we should be too, like, we as metaverse, people that explore in the metaverse, we shouldn't mix it. I think we should just say, like, hey, there's utility. And I think this is what I will give Meta. Meta understands that. And so if you use the Meta Quest Pro, that definitely is a corporate device.
Yes.
If you use the Meta Quest 2, that definitely is a consumer device. And the two will probably come together and be one. But what is needed on the corporate side versus what is needed on the consumer side are intrinsically different. And again, we still haven't let all the developers in. People haven't gotten caught up to standards, or haven't gotten caught up with the standards of the SDKs and the APIs and the just all the utilities that will exist to make these environments the best. And a greatest point on that is when you think about recording in just the headsets, you know how hard it is to do that? You've got to.
Yeah, you need to have a big time tech ability, to say the least.
Yeah, if you want anything that's decent and not going to like mess up your headset's fidelity, like, you know, we haven't figured out how to record and share. And I thought with the Quest Pro, like the biggest downside to that to me is like the coolest video you can get from it is you have to take your phone, you have to shove your phone inside the headset, and then you have to press record on your phone.
Like my dad taking a screenshot.
Yes.
I love you, Dad. Yeah. We just have a little button, just like I have on my Stream Deck. I just have like a 5-minute flashback button. I just push it and boom, I get a clip on my computer of the last 5 minutes.
Dude, we need that. We need
Absolutely.
that, because that's what's gonna excite people. They're gonna be like, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? What's that? What's this? Imagine if you could draw a note to a special someone in their space and you can record it and say, I left you a note. And then they go there and they're like, where's the note? And you send them a video of you doing this note in XR.
Oh yeah, that I would love to be able to share that with anybody. And I want to touch on a really serious point, something that I read through on your webpage that relates back to this topic, but in a specific way. You really talked about Black representation in emerging tech, and I really want to touch on the accessibility of the metaverse and how we can get this out to everyone. And because you talk about the developers and the back end and us building up this tech moving forward, and I think that the more diverse and broad views of the people of the world that we can get involved in this, and the bigger and more strengthening of the communities around it, the well, not just the faster the adoption will go, but I think in the more exciting and the more ideas that will come out, the more we can get this into people's hands.
No, it's a great question and point. Thanks for asking. I think emerging technologies represent the best opportunities for people of color when it comes to entering tech, largely because the standards haven't been set. The best developers in the space probably haven't put in their time, and so like it hasn't been established. Like precedent has not been established on who's the best. And whenever the playing field is leveled in tech, largely, we have seen that people that don't look like the majority get to actually have some precedent and say. And
Amen.
so we look at various shifts, and we look at what happened in the Middle East, and we look at what happened in Asia, and we look at some of the technological revolutions that has just parlayed out. If you're a developer and you're a person of color, getting into the world of Web3 and learning, how to program in Solidity or Rust or any of the languages that dominate there, it's going to have utility. Learning generative AI right now, it's going to have utility, and it's going to be applicable. Learning how to utilize and create different metaverse environments. And the funny thing about that is a metaverse environment is so many different it's like a big ass puzzle, and I don't know if I can curse, but it really is like, it's like this puzzle in the sense where like the development part is just one piece. You still need the culture part, which is like, there's a lot of amazing metaverses that just people haven't figured out how to bring people into them. Like, look at Decentraland. All of Decentraland is like largely these amazing architectural manifestations that just are void of people. Like, there's nobody in there. And if you are a person that's looking at this and you figure out how to be the best metaverse promoter, you're going to have a lot of value, and people are going to like lean on you, because all these corporations that are building things, they need
community.
Yes. Thank you. And that's one part. Another part is design. The people that know how to make the space don't necessarily know how to do the interior decoration. And no offense to the metaverse developers out there. It's just, when I see some of the ways that it looks like IKEA floor models, man. Like, there's no creativity.
And any gamer is looking at this like, guys, come and check out my favorite game if you need some ideas, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's another area. Another area that I think is super fascinating is events. All of these spaces have calendars. And if you go into, whether it be Meta and their offerings, or you go into VR chat and their offerings, and you go into Decentraland, one of the first things you'll always see is an events calendar of some sort. The funny thing is like, those events aren't that they're not that polished just yet. Like, Peloton does have us beat on the events calendar right now.
And I think that's a huge aspect, is the people, right? We have to be involved as the people. And, it's interesting. I just find it so exciting. And I really, really love people like yourself who are continuing to push what is possible and continuing to try to bring that message to the people. Are you working on any upcoming books or projects? I think it's interesting if maybe you wanted to share anything with the listeners today.
For sure. So my next book will actually be co-authored with myself and Floyd Mayweather. Ooh. And we're going to be talking about self-discipline, largely because I am shifting more out of the emerging technology book market and going into the business book market. But one of the things that I see just as a technologist and as an entrepreneur is our ability to stay focused and see things through has been greatly hampered by said digital devices. And it's not just the digital devices, it's technology in general. But when we look at some of the people in the world that have done just great, amazing things, their ability to stay focused and just have demi-human or demigod-like discipline.
They never leave the zone.
It's absurd. And so it was Floyd's never done a book, and it was entirely a challenge to see if Champ would sit down and say, hey, like, let's make something happen. But, great minds are able to make beautiful things happen. And Absolutely. So it took a while, but I'm excited to be able to talk about it today. And it looks like the book will be out in spring 2023. Awesome. So I'm going to be doing some exciting things with the writing room. I think I might open up the writing room so people can kind of see the process of how a book comes to life. Because when I was writing my book, the first one, the NFT handbook, I called a bunch of authors and they told me all types of things. Some people said, hey, keep going, you're going to get there. Other people were like, you're crazy. Why would you write a book about NFTs? Some people were like, your book's not even on this list yet. So like, it's never going to come out. And it was disheartening in some cases, and in other cases, it was empowering. And I think that what I want to do is say that, hey, if you have an idea, you have a story, you can bring that to life, but it is truly a fight. Like, you have to like wake up every day with the same fire, the same energy.
Yes.
And there's going to be some days where you're tired, you just want to go to sleep, but you got to research, you got to write. And seeing that in real time, I think changes your perspective, because you're like, oh, okay, if Q can do it, I can do it. And that's one thing that I will do with this book that we haven't done with the past two. So shout out to Wiley, shout out to the money team, shout out to Floyd Mayweather, aka the champ. And I will be expecting to see you again, not only in the metaverse, but also in another conversation talking about self-discipline.
Oh, you are the most inspiring guy that I have talked to in so long. I love your energy. I love your vibe. I love your focus and the points that you bring up. And I'm going to be following along and seeing where you take us, Mr. QuHarrison Terry. Where does your community meet? Where does your fans gather? Where can the people find you, my friend, beyond your webpage, QuHarrison.com? That's QuHarrison.com.
Thank you for that. Now, I'm on all of the social media networks. You can find me at QuHarrison. It's just as Matthew just spelled it out. And for the people that are looking to support some of the upcoming endeavors and initiatives that I have, I've been really focused on fixing the reading crisis that we have. When you look at the youth and just some of the illiteracy rates that we have and we're faced with, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And one way we can get around that is by bringing new innovative ideas that we see in crypto, that we see in Web3, that we see in the metaverse to the youth, because they're already populating all of the metaverses that we're talking about. They're already in the future. Like when we talk about virtual currencies and economies, I'm always pointing to Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft.
Those are my kids.
Yes. Yeah. And the funny thing is they're being neglected by the current education system. So 1Q9X is a project that I put together. You can find out more about it at 1Q9X.com. And that's what I'm looking for help with. You know, if you're trying to follow me on social media, that's great. But if you're trying to change the world and be a part of some of the amazing things that we're working on, 1Q9X is the space where we're making that happen. So thank you for having me today. I do have to run, unfortunately, but I hope to see you in the metaverse here soon.
My absolute privilege, sir. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Exploring the Metaverse. Don't forget you can contact me directly via email at ExploringTheMetaverseTogether@gmail.com. That's ExploringTheMetaverseTogether@gmail.com. We've got a Facebook page. You'll never guess what it's called. And you can also check out the YouTube channel, growing and getting there to be available to everyone on as many platforms as possible. Don't forget to leave a review on the Apple Podcast platform or wherever you listen to this show. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day.